So I've been at UC Berkeley today and yesterday with some awesome live action team members doing interviews with people, seeing what they think about the GAP, the Genocide Awareness Project display put on by the amazing organization Center for Bioethical Reform. And we've heard some very interesting things from students. We've heard people that get offended or upset at the images instead of upset at the injustice that the images portray. And then some people who very simply and straightforward just say, I think it's wrong. I never thought about it before, but these are little babies, and I think it's wrong that we're killing them. I think they should be allowed to live. So fascinating responses from Berkeley students on a very typically liberal campus, but I've heard a lot of very good, mind-opening conversations that people have been having. But I just wanted to comment briefly on the history of images making movements, images making social reform movements, because we've seen this in the last 200 years make huge headway for the rights of those that were unseen by society, that were ignored by society. So think back with me to the slave trade in Great Britain. This was about 300 years ago, crossing the Atlantic Passage, putting people inside slave ships, buying them out of Africa, and sending them into slavery to work on Caribbean plantations. And the abolitionist movement in Great Britain was really made by two major images which inspired people to action. The first image was a drawing from an investigation done by a young man who went to the towns where the slave ships took port and looked at how they were made, looked at the diagrams of how they were made, and he actually drew this diagram and distributed it across all of Great Britain to show how inhumane these slave ships were when they cramped these slaves together with only 2.5 feet each of room. They couldn't even stand up to make that long and dangerous passage across the Atlantic. The other image, and this image, Benjamin Franklin said, spoke volumes and was more powerful than even the most persuasive essay, was an image made by a man who was famous for his China paintings and famous for his art, and it was an image of a slave reaching up his hands, a black slave, reaching up his hands with handcuffs, with irons around his wrists, and it said, "Am I not a man and a brother?" And that image became the slogan for the abolitionist movement, and ladies would wear it on their dresses, people would stamp it, people would put it on their petitions and papers, and it inspired people to action. Benjamin Franklin said that it did more for the movement than even the most persuasive essay. So think forward with me to the beginning of the 20th century. Lewis Hines, a photographer, toured the country and went to factories and mills where child labor was an institution, where little children were being sent to work in mine shafts, where little children were working at the looms and getting fingers chopped off, emaciated, coughing, lung disease. He took photos of these children. And he would tour America and give speeches and show the photos to Americans. Well, people were pretty upset. They didn't want to think that their clothes were being made by little children with missing limbs. But people said, you know, why are you showing these pictures, photographer Lewis? Why are you showing these pictures? And he said, I'm going to keep showing these pictures until people are so sick of child labor that they'll do away with the institution altogether. Move forward with me finally to 1955, going forward in history. In 1955, a little boy from North America named Emmett Till, the northern part of North America, named Emmett Till, went down to Mississippi, the deep south. Emmett was only 14 years old, and he was black. He was visiting his cousins. His cousins told him that he better be careful about himself, but Emmett was accused nonetheless of whistling at a white woman at only 14. 2 days later, in the middle of the night, some white men kidnapped Emmett, took him out into the rural countryside, beat him so badly he was beyond recognition, gouged out an eye, knocked his nose up into his skull, cracked open his head, left him to die in a creek bed. Well, when Emmett's mother found out about this, she was so distraught. The coroner sent her son to her in a closed casket, in a nailed-shut coffin. But Emmett's mother decided to have a funeral that was public and invite the press, invite the media, invite everyone. And she decided to leave little Emmett's coffin open, even though he was so disfigured, people couldn't even recognize him. People were upset with her. Why are you doing this? It's controversial. It's disgusting. Emmett's mother said, I want the whole world to see what happened to my little Emmett. And so she left the casket open. Likewise, with abortion, we are making a movement, making a social reform movement with the abortion issue to show the world what is happening to these little children, to put a face to the hidden victim of that unborn child. Ever since 1973, and even before it, pro-abortion forces have been trying to hide the unborn child, the victim of abortion. They have hid the ultrasound from women. They have hid them in the closed, sterile clinic doors inside abortion clinics. They have claimed that the unborn child is a fetus, is an embryo, without the right to life. It's just a clump of cells. It's just a blob of tissue. But projects like the Genocide Awareness Projects, projects like Here'sTheBlood.com, projects that show the victim of abortion make the public see that this is a tiny human being who is being violently and unjustly destroyed across our country legally each day. And it's a human being that we must rise up and defend so that we can put an end to abortion.